Voter Integrity Project.
The Voter Integrity Project.
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 Jay Delancey, the director of the Voter Integrity Project.
Hello, Patriots. This segment is on deploying observers. It's kind of the legal side of it. It's not the most exciting one. Who it really targets is the county election members. And we'll talk more about observer behavior in another video. I'll touch on observer behavior and we'll show you the training video that the state puts out. We'll close with that, but it's for now, I just want to go over some of the rules because there's been a great deal of confusion on this point, and I think it's we need to just settle it here. Let's settle this now. Okay, first off, there have been let's see, I want to start with the law. Now, how you find the law, for those of you who don't know, NCLEG is in North Carolina Legislature.gov, www.ncleg.gov. And then you go down here where it says General Statutes. I like this one, General Statutes, Table of Contents. It's pretty cool because it scrolls way down, way down, kind of toward the bottom. Is General Statute 163, my old buddy. I recommend if you really care about this, this is what I did when I got started. I printed it and went out with it, took it and really highlighted it and went through it. It may be pretty dangerous because you'd be amazed how many people, they say, oh, they don't know the law, they don't, election attorney, or attorneys who go, I don't do election law, I don't know election law. Well, you know, it's election law is it's just the law, but it's a law interfacing the electorate, the people, with the law. I don't know how to describe it. I can't think of a more interfacing part of the law. I mean, of course, all law affects us, but this law affects how we get our lawmakers. It's something our leadership agrees to. Our elected, we're a representative republic in that regard, and the people we elect create these laws. The problem with it that I see after having been dabbling in this for 9 years is that the people who wrote this law, it's kind of like a tug of war when they write it. So it's an agreement among thieves as far as how they want to rig the law. And I hate to sound like a conspiracy kook, but this law is written for the benefit of the people who were elected. And then people like us who want to have an honest election, they're like, okay, they're there, so we're neither feast nor foul. The Democrats pretty much hate us, and Republicans pretty much don't trust us. So somewhere in there, we're a group who pushes for just, you know, honesty on both sides. And the key to it all is transparency. And the key to transparency is observers. So what we're going to do is, I want a couple things to mention here. General statute include changes up through September 27th, 2019. We've had a lot of laws change there, and I've had some smart attorneys teach me how to read this, and I'll show you a couple of tricks here. I'm not gonna go on the caveats, but what we're gonna look for is the observer portion of the law. Let me see if okay. The observer portion, I happen to know where it is, but I'm pretty sure I do. 45, 163, 45. Now what you could do is just take the whole law by yourself. Take the whole law. Okay, click it. Or not, let's see. Okay, chapter PDF. This is kind of the way I like to do it. It's 291 pages. And then just do a Control F and say observer. Did I spell it right? Where is it? Okay, yeah. Observers. And that kind of puts you in the ballpark. Of course, there's 38. I don't know if you can see it down here at the bottom. It's 41 mentions of observers. So, there we go. Observers appointed. Who appoints them? The chair of each political party. That galls me, but it is what it is. There are about 20 some states that allow nonpartisan observers. North Carolina is not one of them. Instead, only a party can do it. I've reached out to the Libertarians, to the Republicans, to the Constitutional in the past, and they've all been idiots about it. I've never asked the Democrats because, well, I just didn't waste my time. But maybe I should have. I wonder what they would have done. They probably wanted to know, same thing Republicans do. They want to control what I would teach you. And they'd have different things they want me to teach than the Republicans would. And honestly, I'm disappointed in all the observer training I've seen since 2012 even. I'm disappointed. That's why we're doing the training we're doing. Be that as it may, pick your party and go to the party leader and say, your county party leader, say, will you get me on the list to be an observer? And that list is something they have to handle. Now they are picking them, and the, let's see, individuals authorized to appoint observers must submit in writing to the chief judge each precinct list of observers appointed for that precinct, except that list of at-large observers authorized in this subsection. Of this section shall be submitted to the county director of elections. Individuals authorized to appoint observers must, prior to 10 a.m. on the 5th day prior to any primary or general election, submit in writing to the chair of the county board 2 signed copies, blah, blah, blah. What's the point here? The 5th day, 10 a.m. The way we read that is, well, I think the early voting is what, 15th? So that'd be the 10th, by 10 a.m. on the 10th. To be safe, I would get it in by the close of business on the 9th. Now, as I'm giving you this, it's the 3rd, and it'll be OBE. I'm going to leave this up, and you'll have to do the math next year around, because this is true every time. Now, our understanding is that if you get it in late, no, it just means you don't have observers for that 5-day window. And obviously, if it's election day and you get it in late, it's just too late. But as far as early voting goes, if your county, y'all don't get your act together, or maybe you add names, you create a new list and submit it, I would argue they have to receive that list. It just means that you have to wait 5 days before that new list can go into effect. Now, some of these things, like that, I just told you, this is a matter of the Board of Elections not wanting the oversight. They're not going to want observers, and we've already seen a great deal of resistance from the administrative state, in this case, the deep state in your government, in your county government at the Board of Elections. They don't want observers. They don't want people looking at what's going on there. They don't want it. So we'll get more into that later in the training, but for now, if they block you on this, contact your party, the legal staff, and get them, if you have a lawyer for your county party or state party, tell them we're submitting our list late and we want, there's a 5-day waiting period and then it goes into effect. This is something your party should fight for, and if they don't, if they push back and don't want to do it, give us a call, let us know, and we will see if we can help them see it the right way, because this is, yeah, we've been fighting this fight for so long, and Republicans, to be honest, 2012 and 2020 are the only 2 times I've ever seen the NC GOP fight for observers. And honestly, I think the reason is that the presidential candidate in those 2 elections, Romney and the Trump reelection campaign, wanted to focus on observers. That typically the state and county parties are more concerned about greeters than they are about observers. But the priority this year, thankfully, thank you, Donald Trump, the priority is observers, because the fraud is inside. Most people who show up at the polls generally know who they're voting for, and they don't really care about some greeter. If you want to be a greeter, great, I got work for you, but contact your party chair either way. But we need observers. We the people, not necessarily we the party, but we the people do. And there's the list, 5 days prior to it. And it goes into the weeds about how many copies and where it goes. I'm not going to bother you with that, because this is targeting Well, you county leaders, you better know this law that you got 5 days to get it in there. Now, there's a section in here I want to cover on at-large observers before we start digging into some weeds on this. At-large observers may serve at any one-stop site. They can also go to any precinct, by the way. But this is a section on one-stop sites. And let's see, we're going to go for more at-large observer. Okay, a couple of rules about observers. No electioneering in the voting place. What that means is you can't be in there as an observer and also, hey, vote for my guy. No. And if you see someone doing that, you need to make a stink. Traditionally, what we've seen is that in heavy Democrat counties, a Democrat will go in there and be electioneering, and people will complain and nobody will do anything about it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. So, I mean, you got to make a stink. You got to really contact your party lawyers, and if they won't do it, call the media and get them to come out and take a look at it. It's really bad. Call us. We will be happy to weigh in, but you will have, I'm sure your party will have an attorney hotline to call. Call them if you see someone inside electioneering. What does that look like? They're grabbing people, telling them who to vote for. They're handing out literature. It's pretty blatant. And they're doing it because they're like a party boss in that county. We've seen this happen. It took several efforts pushing to the unnamed county director of elections before she finally did the right thing. And by the way, this was going on at the early voting location right outside her door in the same building. And it's not Wake County for a change. I've had my grievances with Wake, but this was not Wake. I don't think Wake would even allow this. This is so criminal. They knew they wouldn't get away with it, but this is in another county. So no electioneering or anything else to impede the voter. You can't get in their way. As a matter of fact, you can't even talk to them. But let's see. Subject to these restrictions, the chief judge and judge of elections shall permit the observer to make observations and take such notes as the observer may desire. So you are allowed to carry notes in there. Now, that's the other thing called runners that I'm not going to talk about beyond this. It's some partisan thing. It's where runners, they call them runners. They're classified observers. They have to be on that same kind of list. Runners are for when your county has they have a phone bank and they're going to bring in a runner to see who voted, and if they have their list of who's voting, and if you didn't vote, they're going to call you and say, hey, Ms. Johnson, I thought you were going to vote. Do you need a ride, or you need someone to vote for you? I mean, not to sound cynical, that we know that happened in Chicago, but we don't know where else, where they would call up. And believe me, years ago in Virginia, I was the guy making those calls, and called Ms. Johnson, and something she'd read in the paper that day about an allegation against Mark Early. She just said, I don't think I'm going to vote. So because somebody threw mud at Mark Early on election day, she's an elderly lady, she said she wasn't going to vote. I was frosted, but I didn't get mad at her. I just made sure the whole room heard it. You mean to tell me that because of something someone said about Early in today's paper, you're not going to vote? She goes, that's it. I'm not going to vote. I was like, oh, gosh, you're killing me. What happened in Chicago has been documented in a federal trial and a federal prosecution, was that the guy would hang up in the boiler room and say, okay, go vote for Ms. Johnson. And they'd point to someone to go in and vote because they knew Ms. Johnson wasn't voting. And they'd go in and impersonate her. Of course, voter impersonation is extremely rare. Now, the only reason it's rare is because there haven't been observers to stop people from doing it. That's why it's rare. Observers could stop them or catch them. And as you'll see in our video, sometimes observers do catch them. And it's kind of fun when you do, but kind of frustrating because you get mad and your head will blow up if you're not careful. Okay. Hopefully you've been reading that while I've been rambling, so I'm not going to read it to you. I do want to look at-large observers. And I still haven't found the big thing I wanted to say about that, so we're going to look some more. It's about these at-large observers, and there's a bone of contention I want to highlight and leave it there and circle back to it. Let's see. The chair of each party shall have the right to designate 10 at-large observers who are residents of the county who may attend any voting place in that county That has been the law for a couple of years. We like that law because sometimes you just can't find people in that precinct who can do it. It's a real problem in some precincts because where Democrats live all over the county, Republicans do not. And it's a political science fact that people tend to vote the way their neighbors are. So if you live in a neighborhood full of Democrats, in political science, they believe that you live in a Democrat neighborhood, and the tendency is that you do because of peer pressure and stuff like that. Be that as it may, in some of the heavy Democrat neighborhoods, I'll go ahead and say it, in some of the black neighborhoods, um, black Republicans are afraid because of lawlessness within their community, that's so bad a stereotype, but for very good reasons, black Republicans living in black neighborhoods are in a state of fear about it. And we've gotten reports of harassment of black people working in the polls, working outside the polls, handing out literature for Republicans. NAACP guy in Greenville scared the crap out of this kid. He took his coat off like he's going to beat him up. It was all bluster, but the kid was so scared he left. He was shaking. And so there's intimidation that goes on, but it's generally the Democrats who do it. And I've never seen Republicans do intimidation. By the way, the Voting Rights Act 1965, it was written because Democrats were harassing black people at the polls, and nothing's changed. They just do it in the neighborhoods now. But anyway, I digress. At-large observers, they can go countywide. Also, in a really cool law, the state last year, I've thrown a lot of shade at David Lewis, but one thing he did do that was good was right here. He allowed a law to go in that allowed 100 at-large observers that are statewide, and this solves a huge problem in places like Robeson County and Durham County, where it's really hard to recruit observers in those counties. But those counties are festering hellholes of vote fraud. There, I said it. So we need to have at-large observers to go in there because there's no other way to solve the problems in those counties. And we'll say a lot more about that later, but you don't want to have, you cannot have the worst counties being unrepresented. Another county to look out for is Guilford, but I understand in 2020 there's this great activism that has really worked on that, and I'm hoping that some of you who had the Guilford training will check out this training too. If you haven't, please spread the word because this will really augment what Larry did. I've heard great reports about what Larry did out there, and I want to give him kudos. And I wish I had 100 people just like him, one in each county. He's a Republican. He was working for Republican interests. And I'm going to tell you, I'm working for vote fraud interests. So our interests are a little bit different, not to throw shade on the Republicans, but their agenda is different than ours. And I'll tell you in some key places where it is, because there's things we would advise that will give Republican attorneys the vapors. So you don't want to, if you're going to give your Republican attorney the vapors, you can blame me, but you'll see. I'll get to that in a minute. The list submitted by the chair of the political party may be amended between the one-stop period under these laws up here. That's just how it defines one-stop. And general election day to substitute one or all at-large observers for election day. We take a more liberal reading on that we may lose in court, but I think you can substitute players in for at-large as needed, as long as you're willing to put them on the bench for 5 days. But your county boards could take a harder view on it and say, nope, you can't make any changes until election day. Well, that's just stupid, because what if your at-large observer comes down with the COVID and then they can't do it and you can't substitute? I mean, come on. You can, yes, substitute them. If you have someone with a legitimate reason, get your list in, get it in on time, then make substitutions as needed as people drop out. And the county should allow it. If they don't, contact your party, talk to the attorneys, and if the attorneys in your party don't want to do anything, contact us. We'll run it to our attorneys. We'll have our attorneys call your attorneys, and we'll see, because we think you should be allowed to change it. We think that was the spirit of the law that you can substitute players as needed. Now, this is another bone of contention here. It says not more than 2 observers from the same political party shall be permitted in the voting enclosure at any time. That's the way the law was written. And then they added the at-large and said this. This should have been a period. It said it was a comma. Okay. In addition, 1 of the at-large observers from each party may also be in the voting enclosure. The implication I get there is that, okay, at least 3 people can be in there at the same time, or at most 3 people. If you have 2 precinct-specific observers and 1 at-large observer, the limit is 3. Now, the fact is, you could have 2 observers at any time. But is that a fact? We're going to hold right there. I hate to break these things up, but I'm going to stop share. And I have to take a pause here, and I'm going to be transparent as crud with you. I don't want to. I'm going to pause this recording and come back to you. All right, I know you missed me, so here we go. The reason we do that, we're not going to edit this stuff out. Just going to do it raw because, well, it's real. It's just who we are, and I'm just the front man for a lot of people who've done a lot of work on this, and we got a huge, well, not huge, but a great team of people who help us think through these things, and I'm just the guy who's going to tell you about it. And we're not going to put a lot of cuts in this video, so just see it as it is, as if our speaking in public, I guess. Okay, where were we? Okay, except that in addition, 1 of the at-large observers from each party may also be in the voting enclosure. This annoys me. Now, let me, I'll show you why in a moment here. Okay, in order to do that, you have to see how they implement. You see, the state offers law. I want to go here. All right, the state has, this is the, I'm going to cut straight to it. Each agency, excuse me, each agency in the state, they have laws that put them into being and give them money and all that. And the legislature, they don't want to get down the minutia of the law. They don't have time. So they create this thing called the administrative, excuse me, the RRC, the Regulatory Rules Commission. And it's a governing body appointed by the legislature, 4 of them by the speaker and 4 of them by the senator pro tem. And excuse me, I'm coughing. Okay, they have this, and what they do is that commission hears from the agency what the agency wants to do as far as implementing the laws that the legislature uses for kind of getting down the weeds of how the agency runs. So the legislature says this about observers, and the Board of Elections has a say in on how those details are carried out. Now I'm going to show you how to I want to teach you how to fish here. So the website is ncsbe.gov. There's no O there. If it's BOE, it generally means Board of Education. So Board of Elections, they use NCSBE, or you'll see them refer to CBE. That means County Board of Elections. Anyway, this is ncsbe.gov. And what we recommend, there's 2 things you can do. I'm going to hit legal resources. You type that in, and boom, as I was saying, boom. Okay, legal resources, here we go. Now, this is a great page. It kind of has a little bit about everything. Rulemaking, numbered memos, rulemaking, law book, election law, and I already showed you that. That's a link back to that page I showed you a minute ago. What we're going to hit on here is numbered memos. My bad. No, we're going to hit on the rulemaking. Numbered memos is later, because rulemaking is the second level. Oh, come on. This is a dead end. Okay, legal resources. Oh man, I'm losing you. All right, I'm just going to cut to it. There is a rule, numbered memos. Okay, I see why I got these out of order. Okay, here's their homepage. Let's skip legal resources and we'll go with North Carolina Administrative Code. Observers. Now, the administrative code is what they use when that group I told you about, there's 4 by the speaker and 4 by the senator pro tem. These are the people who get into the weeds and decide how the agency is going to implement the rules. Generally, what happens, the agency, a big word here, promulgates, they put forth the rule, and then that RRC, as they're called, they approve them. Last year, our director of elections tried to redefine emergency so she could get emergency powers and get away with some mischief. But wow, I'm just really messing up here. And finding this, and with apologies for taking so long, there's another way to cut to it, but I was hoping they don't make it really easy to find here. Okay, we'll do one more time. NC Administrative Code. I would think that was under legal resources. And while that is cogitating, I'm going to go back to legal resources and see where it is. You got number of memos, you got rulemaking. Well, this is embarrassing. What I say a while ago about not stopping this, I'm going to have to stop it, it looks like, because these people have made it difficult. Okay, I'm going to pause this and apologize to you for being silly and not knowing where it is. Okay, where were we before I was so rudely interrupted? NC Ad. You just search this, North Carolina Administrative Code, and then what you get. Now, every state has this, by the way. It's this kind of goes into all of it. This is the way rules are made. Every department, including the Department of Education. As you see, you look down all these, and it has every agency has these different rules, and it's a very interesting process that we're not going to go into today. But this is how you take back your government as you go into the administrative rules. We're going to go to elections, and then we're going to go down to observers, election observers, which is section 20. So you go from statute to administrative code, and then you would go down to something called numbered memos, and that's what threw me off. I'll get to memos in a moment. Election observers, it's administrative code, NCAC 20.0101. I think I have it here too, a little blown up here because I had something highlighted. They interpreted this. Oh, crud. Right here, this thing I had highlighted earlier in the law under observers appointed, they interpreted, the State Board of Elections interpreted it a little tighter. They said only one at-large observer from each political party may be in the voting enclosure at any time, even if no precinct-specific observers are present. This is a problem because you're not going to have precinct-specific observers at every precinct. You need to have at least one, and you need to have, if you don't have at least one, make darn sure you've got at least one, especially in these heavy Democrat districts, you have at least one trustworthy Republican in there who is in the room and can see what happens. And I'll tell you why this is a big deal. I know we're nonpartisan, but this is what happened in Houston, Texas. Sheila Jackson Lee's district in 2010, I believe. Might have been 2008, but don't quote me. It's one or the other. True the Vote, a group that inspired us to get started. They had observers in Sheila Jackson Lee's district. If you want to know, if you don't know who she is, think of AOC politics, a radical leftist in a heavy Democrat neighborhood. She's black. The neighborhood is black. Race is a component there. And these Tea Party people that went in to observe the election were white. And around 5 p.m. that afternoon, the powers that be in those precincts had enough, and they guys came in. The new Black Panthers were not just in Philadelphia; they were in Houston too, and they came through and intimidated. They had their baseball bats, and they ran the observers out. A clear violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Ironically, it's the new Klan. It's the new fascists on the other side, not Antifa, but the new Black Panthers. So these people ran out the observers in there, and then just to put a oomph to it, they filed lawsuits making really horrible allegations against those observers, and that really, the Republican Party is afraid of those kinds of lawsuits, so that's why they haven't been keen on observers. And there's other lawsuits I don't want to go into, or maybe we'll at some other point. The point here is that an observer who goes in by himself is in danger of that happening to them. Now, I want to scare you county party leaders, especially on this, is you've got to pay attention to this and make sure you got a wingman for every observer. If you can't get 2 observers in there, you may need 2 at-large observers to go in there. Set that aside. I'll talk about 2 at-large again in a moment. But for right now, make sure you've got a trustworthy, not just someone with an R behind their name, but a trustworthy Republican in those polls. By the way, because of COVID, the State Board of Elections rigged it to where only one precinct, a minimum or maximum. I'll get it right in a minute. It used to be that more than half of the precinct employees had to be from that precinct, had to live in that precinct. That rule is gone. We don't like that rule is gone, because there's great mischief you can do when outsiders can pack a precinct. That's great mischief. That said, the train runs both ways. Say you don't have a Republican who lives in that neighborhood. Well, tough tootie, they have to put that Republican in there even though they don't live in that neighborhood, because now they don't have that quota rule. So if you want to have a Republican in there, you've got a pretty good legal basis to get them in there. This is another thing where if they say no, contact your party, let them figure it out. And if they can't figure it out, have them contact us. Again, we'll have our attorneys talk to their attorneys and we'll get this straight. They have the authority to get a Republican in every precinct. It ought to be one of the judges. It hopefully will be. But if it's just one Republican, they might put them on curbside where they're going outside all day and not seeing what's going on. You need somebody in the voting enclosure who's there and can see. So if you have an observer in there, that Republican employee will verify what you're seeing, and we'll go into other tapes about what you'll see. What I'm mainly concerned about is not sending someone in there alone into dangerous precincts. What are the dangerous ones? Simple. It's the ones that have heavy Democrat voting, heavy Democrat control. Now, we're nonpartisan. I keep saying that. I'm talking about partisan stuff because there's some strategery here. Democrats, your concern, as I'm told, and as I read the literature, your concern is voter intimidation. Knock yourself out. Go get your observers, get them in there, and you'll see how Republicans intimidate voters in the polls. It's going to be a boring day for you, but go ahead. Just don't talk to the Republican observers. Let them do their job. Don't distract them. Now, story there, but I won't go into it. Okay, only one at-large observer from each political party may be in the voting enclosure at any time, as you see on your screen. I don't like that rule because it makes no sense. Now, this is the administrative code. They have taken the law, they've taken this hypothetical and stretched it to say that we disagree, and for very serious reasons, but we're going to need a judge to figure this out. What I would ask you to do, if you're a county leader looking at this, and if you are willing, if you got some stones, if you're willing, or got some ovaries and you're willing to fight a good fight, send in, if you don't have enough observers, you have no observers in a voting location during early voting. We need to resolve this as early as possible. If you have no observers in a location, go ahead and send in 2 at-large. Make them kick those at-large out. And then let's get the facts, document who did it, when they did it, and they're going to cite this rule. Okay, if you want to fight a fight, you will get. Talk to your attorneys, see if your party wants to fight it. If they don't, contact us, because we're itching for a fight, or we think they are, by having this rule. Kim Strack put this in, and that's one of my greatest disappointments. There were many, but that was one of the disappointments I had when Pat McCrory's appointed director of elections allowed this rule to go through. So a lot of Republicans will go, Kim Strack said it, and that's the way it is. No, I'm not going to make this a Strack rant fest. You can read our website and figure out how we feel about her tenure, but we've never really laid it out like a will in a chapter in a book or something. But for now, my point is, this is another bad rule they did, where they took this and interpreted it in the most restrictive way they could. Where the way I saw this was, it was limiting to no more than 3 observers. And even then, when it talks about a runner, it says a 4th observer can be in there, because a runner just comes in, gets information, and leaves, and they don't care. But I'm not talking about runners today, but they're, I did mention them earlier, and that's what they are, that's what they do. So this is the way the law stands, and we're not happy about it. And the only way we're going to get that solved is with a decent judge in a decent county, where the facts line up, where we can fight this and get the courts to see it our way. So obviously in Wake County, you'll lose this because the judges here are all a bunch of partisan hacks, as far as I'm concerned. And it's just my opinion. But anyway, not all of them. There are some good ones, but there's too many bad ones. But enough about Judge Collins. Okay, that'd be a lot funnier in an audience, but it's really awkward doing this in private. Okay, so that's the NCAC. Now there's one other place that goes down beneath that, and that's where the Board of do things on the fly, and they call them numbered memos. It's how they, you can't go to the RRC. It takes too long. You got things they got to do, and it just takes too long. So the numbered memos are the other remedy for this, and they issue them all the time. You see who the director is. It says who they're from. And by the way you find these is back on that legal resources page, or you can go to the NCSBE and just type in, let's just assume I couldn't find it, and I go back here. If you can remember the term numbered memos, search it, and bada biff, bada bing, bada boom. See, it's under legal resources too, but if you just want to look for them there, numbered memos, and we look through them. And I'm just going to show you a couple of them that have touch points that mention observers, and it's talking about curbside voting, and we'll go a lot more. In fact, we're going to do a whole segment on curbside voting. But for now, I want to just show you legal requirements for curbside voting, because there are some observer touch points with this that are worth looking for. Observers, okay. To promote health and safety of curbside voting, observers shall at all times remain socially distanced from election workers. Okay, fine. And voters in the curbside area. She's going to reference another memo here. And I think I have that one up, but for now, let's just stay where we are. See that regarding social distance. See that for additional information about observers and curbside voting. That is truly, I think that's the other one we're going to do. 2016 tax 17. Yeah, we'll go to that in a minute. Okay, I just want to cover it all here for curbside, and then we'll move. Oh, that's it. Oh, goodness. Okay. Oops. All right. I guess that's the end of the memo. This is where she's got some signs that they want people to set up, both color and black and white, and this is what the state is directing. There's nothing wrong with these signs. Let me zoom out so you can see them. Attention. Okay, here we go. All right. Attention, curbside voting. You may vote curbside if you're unable to enter the voting place without physical assistance due to age or disability. Disability means you are unable to enter the polling place due to age or physical or mental disability, such as agoraphobia. Oh, I'm afraid of crowds. Oh, okay. That's a mental disability. Or if you have a medical condition that puts you at increased risk of COVID, should not wear a mask due to medical or behavioral condition or disability, or experience symptoms of COVID, stay in your car. Okay, hey, we all agree on that. There's a problem with this. And I'll go into a little bit. The term disability, they go in that again about what it means. It says neither fear of contracting COVID nor refusal to wear a mask due to personal preference. Rather, medical use is eligible, makes the voter eligible for curbside voting. There's a loophole here. It's called the Americans with Disability Act, or HIPAA and all that stuff. You know, they're going to coach people, the people who commit fraud by curbside are going to coach people and say, you just tell them you have a medical condition and leave it at that. Because nobody's allowed to ask you. If the voter has questions, you just point to the above section. But disability is an honor system deal where an election employee knows they cannot ask you what your disability is. So they have these wonderful exceptions. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because they can't ask you. You can say in your head, I have agoraphobia. I'm afraid I get uncomfortable around crowds. Well, good for you. You go to ball games, they can't quiz you on that. So you're pretty much at the mercy of them for doing that. So what's the point here? The other number memo, polling site preparedness. Let's see, polling site arrangement. We'll go into more of that later. Observers. Polling site preparations must include structured plans to accommodate appointed election observers. Election officials and observers should have the same expectations regarding conduct and access to polling site. That's kind of important. In an effort to provide the state political parties with uniform instructions on training observers, we have created a 2-page information sheet and a short video for prospective observers. We'll go to that when I close here. It says a copy of the information sheet is attached to the memo, and a video is posted here. I will show you those things in a moment. We'll go to that video last. Let's see. Electronic devices in the possession of observers may be used to film or take pictures. Let me try that again. May not be used to film or take pictures inside of the voting enclosure. That's kind of a big deal. Do not do that. You will get kicked out of there, and I disavow knowledge of you. It is I'm told it's a class 2 misdemeanor. In other words, you can get in trouble. You can get in legal trouble for it, have to go to court and hire attorneys. Don't do it. Those of you who know me know there's an irony in that, but I have to tell you, do not do it. You take matters into your own hands. You risk fraud. You risk prosecution. Okay. An observer who wishes to record the image of a specific voter shall obtain consent of both the voter and the chief judge of the one-stop site manager. Now imagine that. You've seen this woman walk in there once already, and you see her again. Hey, ma'am, can I take your picture? She's like, no. And you have to also get the permission of the chief judge. Oh, by the way, the one-stop, those terms are interchangeable. The one-stop site manager, it's like the chief judge, only there's a different legal standing. So sometimes I'll say judge, and I mean either or of those. So cut me some slack, will you? This is almost like live video. Okay, an observer who wishes to record an image of a candidate need only obtain the consent of the candidate. So, if Barack Obama walks in, you say, hey, President, or hey, Barack, hey, Barry, can I film you? Sure. And then you can film him, and it's okay. The chief judge can't veto that, but those are the rules. Now, this talks about runners, and I don't care about that. You county leaders can read that if you want to. There's more to this, but that's just kind of the staffing and the behavior of them, and I'm going to go to that. Let's see, curbside voter preparations. Okay, yeah, this is where observers touch in with curbside. And this thing's getting long. I think we'll break this for now, and we'll really focus on curbside later. because I'm getting too long in this video. I want to stay focused on observers for now, on observer do's and don'ts. So what we're going to do is switch over now to the video. All right, this is a short video that was produced by the State Board of Elections, tips for monitoring, observing, and I'm going to play it.
Tips for monitoring or observing the election at polling sites. Outside monitors. Anyone has the right to watch or monitor the election outside the polling place. All activity must remain outside the marked 50-foot line at all times. Outside monitors often include individuals, candidates, political staff, and advocacy organizations. Outside observers must maintain good order at all times. The Chief Judge has the duty to ensure a safe and orderly voting site and has the right to remove anyone who is disruptive. Outside monitors are allowed to pass out campaign material and sample ballots, speak to voters, conduct polling, and monitor and report concerns and complaints.
I want to say something about that. I didn't realize what I was seeing at the time, but I watched as an employee from inside, went outside, took her vest off, outside, and started electioneering to people in line, handing out leaflets. That was illegal, and had I had my wits about me, I would have done more about it. So there is electioneering that goes on out there. People break rules. Yeah, you need to pay attention outside as well, but as an observer, you can't. So this is where your greeters need to have some training too. Note to party leaders, train your greeters a little bit too.
Outside monitors are prohibited from entering the polling place or curbside voting area unless they are actually in the act of voting. They are prohibited from obstructing, intimidating, or interfering with any person registering or voting. Observing the election inside. Members of the public may not enter a polling site to observe the election process. Only election observers appointed in advance by the political party may be inside a polling place. The Chief Judge will designate a place for observers that is close enough to hear the voters state their name and address, but far enough not to impede the voting process.
Pay attention to that. You have to be able to hear the voters as they announce in. If you cannot, you need to point this out to them. This is as we go in the other section about the procedure for documenting. Number one, you document it. Number two, you ask the judge, are you serious? Are you sure? And, be polite. Don't let your frontal lobe shut down. But if they're serious about it, step outside and make that call to your attorneys or call us, and we'll unscrew that, because they have to allow you to be able to hear the names and addresses of the voters. And there's a reason for that. We'll go into in another block on polling place operation, but we're not going to do that today.
Each party may assign at least 2 observers per precinct and an additional 10 at-large observers for the county. No more than 2 precinct-assigned observers and 1 at-large observer from the same political party may be in the voting enclosure at the same time.
See that? 3 observers, 2 precinct-specific and 1 at-large. Our gripe is that if there are no precinct-specific, they're saying still only 1 at-large. We disagree. Also, the 2 observers per precinct. I didn't go over it, but the law says you can substitute. I might need to go over that because there's been some confusion on this. Let's see. This has been a real bone of contention in some counties. It says the chair of each party shall have the right to designate 2 to attend at each voting place. Each primary election observer may be relieved during the day of the primary election after serving no less than 4 hours, and provided the list required of this section to be filled out by each chair contains the names of all persons authorized to represent such chairs, political party. So you got, let's say you have a 12-hour day at the polls, 4-hour minimum. Let's see, I can do the math here. I went to state, so you got 3 4-hour shifts, right? If you went to Carolina, work with me here. You got 3, you got 4, and then 4 is 8, and 4 more is 12. So you've got 3 shifts, and you can have 3 observers. You can, now this gets complicated. Now you can have 6 slots because you can have 2 precinct-specific observers. So that's 6 slots. So you got it? Okay. Some thought you could only have 2 for the precinct, and that's just wrong. No, you can have 6 for the precinct as long as you don't stack them in there at once. Now, the catch to it is say you got somebody who's coming in for the first 4 hours and they get sick, or their kid calls and they miss the bus and that observer has to leave. You can't replace that observer until the end of that 4-hour shift. Isn't that sweet? But you can bring an at-large in to fill. Just saying. That's what I would do. That's one good use of at-large observers. Now, we move on.
Precinct observers may be relieved after serving for at least 4 hours. Observers appointed by party are allowed to make observations and take notes. They're allowed to observe the registration, ballot, and help tables without impeding voters or precinct officials.
Okay, this is another bone of contention. They in Wake County, DeFuhrer, who runs Wake County, I should call him El Duce because it matches his hair. He draws a little square and says, "You stand here." No. You are allowed to observe the registration, ballot, and help tables without impeding the voters or precinct officials. So you can't hear what's going on at the help table. You should be allowed to walk over there. If you have a chief judge or a site supervisor or whatever they call them, if they're going to say you stand in that little box and don't move, step outside, call your attorney, and we'll begin the process. You know the drill. Call the attorney. Your attorney should help you get out of that box because you are allowed to observe the help table without impeding voters or precinct officials. The only real restriction is you cannot stand behind the check-in desk or behind the help desk table, because then you can see the personally identifying information of the voter, like their driver's license number, their date of birth that nobody knows. That's the intent of the law, but the intent of bureaucrats is to restrict down on that. And Wake County has the most amazing bureaucrat I've ever seen, the most restrictive bureaucratic deep state employee I've ever seen. And that's what we deal with here. But in your county, hopefully you won't have a jerk. You'll have someone who's reasonable. But I call him a jerk. It's just my opinion. Okay. Yeah, I'm supposed to apologize to him. Nah. Okay, observe the registration, ballot, help tables without impeding voters or precinct officials, period. Stay out of their way. That's all.
They're allowed to walk outside the voting enclosure to observe the curbside voting area.
Okay, well, I'm going to drop out of that runner thing. I want to talk about the, let me back up just a skosh right there. Allowed to walk outside. This is another case where that numbered, the NCAC, they really screwed it up, and we went after them for it because it says you can be kicked out. Observer may leave the voting place without having served for 4 hours, but the observer cannot be replaced by a new observer until at least 4 hours have passed since the first observer began serving. Okay, now with at-large, at-large can come and go. That's silly, and then come back again later. Oh no, you had to wait 4 hours before coming back. That's silly. If they pull that crap, call your attorney, have your attorney call our attorney, we'll get it straight. Okay, now, an observer who leaves the voting place for any reason may be prohibited by the chief judge from returning. Okay, there's no comma here, but this is something that will have to be fought in court because, thank you, Kim Strack, she points out that it says, if the observer's return would cause a disruption of the voting enclosure. I'm not kidding you. This is no joke. Not a joke. We have seen chief judges and site supervisors kick people out for no reason at all, just for any excuse. In one case, the polls were closed. There were no voters in the precinct. The the observer, a lady named Sandy, a sweet lady. Sandy was out there was inside observing, waiting to see the ballot box sealed. I don't remember the name of the chief judge. We'll say it's Gloria. One of the employees came over to Sandy and said, what are you still doing here? She goes, I want to wait to see the ballot box be sealed, or the ballots be sealed. She goes, oh, Gloria will never allow that. Sandy was like, what? But they just stand there, and the polls are closed, so they're idly chit-chatting. And Sandy said they were talking about shoes, looking down, talking about shoes. And Gloria came over, red-faced, and said, you know the rules. You can't talk to anyone in this precinct but me. Get out of here. Okay. They will find any excuse or no excuse at all to kick you out of there. This is why you need to have a second person in there who is paying attention to what's going on. We've been pushing for specified observer rights, but David Lewis, the other side of David Lewis, blocked it every time we tried to get them. So for years, we've been pushing for specified statutory rights for observers, and we've had a hard time getting them. Now that Lewis has been indicted and resigned from the legislature, maybe we can get that to work differently. My point here is leaving. Now, a hard view. Now, we saw in the video, it says you can leave. Let me find that again. It says you can leave. Walk outside the voting enclosure to observe curbside voting area. It doesn't say you can leave to use the bathroom or to go out and make a phone call. It says somewhere else you can go out and make a phone call. But at the end of the day, this clause right here is going to cause problems if you are in a precinct where the cheaters have planned to be cheating. If you are there, you're a lucky girl, you're a lucky guy. It's going to be an interesting day for you. Note to party leaders, you want to find those precincts as best you can and make sure you have ample staffing there. Make sure you've got at least 2 people, because you're going to need a witness, because they're going to call it disruptive for you to leave and go to the bathroom if they want you out of there. This is a bone of contention, and it may wind up in front of a judge at 11 o'clock at night on election day, but this, or hopefully not, 11 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, this is a problem that we need you to be cognizant of when you leave. Just have good relations with your chief judge. That's the easy way around this. Have some rapport. Let them know, hey, I'm not here to make your job hard. I just want to make sure, sometimes you can use me. Sometimes I'm very helpful. And I'm not always a pain in the neck. I mean, present company excluded. Gary will, the Fuhrer will tell you that I am a pain in the neck, but that's just my nature. We're both bald guys, so I guess it's part of our nature.
They may obtain the list of people who have voted at least at the following times: 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. They may possess personal electronic devices as long as they are not disruptive to voters or election officials.
Okay, that is true for any observer, and runners are considered observers. You may have an electronic device in there. They can't tell you, no cell phones allowed in here. Voters have cell phones allowed. They have their cell phones, and so do employees. You just can't pull out your video and start recording. Doesn't say anything about audio, does it? Just saying.
They may also report concerns and incidents to the chief judge and or the county elections director. So
if you don't like something you're seeing, contact the chief judge. Well, we'll go over that later. These are what's allowed. There's a procedure I want you to follow on that, because if you contact the chief judge before you've written it down, you might get mad. And if you get mad, you're gonna blow it. And I wouldn't bother calling the county elections director. They're busy. I would call us or call the attorney line for your party, and maybe we can help sort it out. You're going to need to let the county election director know it, but you need to document it and then talk to your lawyers, whoever your legal help team is.
They may also observe closing procedures.
Whoa. What's that?
Observe closing procedures.
They may observe closing procedures. We will have a whole separate segment on closing procedures, but you may observe it.
Observers appointed by party are prohibited from entering the voting enclosure before the polls open.
That's annoying, but it is what it is. And the second one is serious. They'll kick you out for this.
They do not speak to voters or assistants.
We asked to wear badges that said election observer the Fuhrer wouldn't let us, but you might ask your county if you can. There's a simple reason for it. Just a little, nothing too garish, but something that says, I'm an observer, I'm not allowed to talk to voters. Because your friends are going to come see, they'll be in there, hey, Jay, what you doing? You point to your sign and go, sorry, I can't. You can't say that. If you say, sorry, I can't. I had an employee come and address me. I'd gotten permission to take a picture. This is how petty they are, but this is Wake County. I had I asked, there was a sign that said, I voted. It was a selfie sign because they didn't want you taking a picture with your ballot. So they had a sign, like a bubble that said, I voted. And the idea is you get in front of that sign and take your picture. I liked it. I took a picture of the sign. An employee came by and said, hey, you can't take pictures in here. I said, well, the chief judge allowed me. She said I could take this picture. And he goes, okay. By the time I got home, Joan Fleming had called me from the State Board of Elections saying, Jay, what's this I hear about you talking to people in the polls other than the chief judge? So these people are petty and they're looking for reasons to kick you out and to complain about you. They may be nice, but some of them are passive aggressive backstabbers. So be nice to them too. And document. That's how you do your backstabbing. Don't speak to anybody except the chief judge. It's kind of funny because the chief judge can be standing there and the other person standing right beside the chief judge. You can say, Chief Judge, since I'm not allowed to speak to that person, could you convey to that person that I think she has already voted, that I saw her here an hour ago? Could you please convey that to her? You know, you can talk through the chief judge. It's a stupid rule, but on the other hand, it makes sense. Do you want to be harassed by an observer while you're in the polls? I know I don't. So that's fair. That train runs both ways. Just make sure nobody else is doing it too.
They do not wear or distribute campaign material. They do not stand behind the registration table or help table because poll books and laptops display confidential voter information.
Okay, I want to say two things. Do not wear or distribute campaign material while you're on duty as an observer. Now, if you're done with your shift and you want to go outside and do electioneering as a greeter, by all means, they can't stop you. It's a free country, I think. On the other way around, though, if you electioneer and then go in, they could complain about, oh, I don't think you should be allowed to do that. But the law says you can. You're not doing it inside. And the fact that you were doing it out there, okay. And, well, people might think you're whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's a gray area of the law, but I mean, really? I mean, if you're a Democrat, it'll be okay. If you're a Democrat watching this, and you want to work a 4-hour shift, handing out flyers in front of the polls, and then go take an observer shift, there's no polling official is going to stop you. If you're a Republican and you do that, you might need to call your attorneys, but because there are polling officials that will try and stop you, but it's chicken manure, so don't worry about it. Now, that last one, this is a key rule to everything. Do not stand behind the registration table or help table because poll books and laptops display confidential voter information. That guy I mentioned before, the Fuhrer, he actually had a 65-year-old man standing in the corner, taking that rule and extrapolating it to where he could not move out of the corner. And finally, that man, that was John Pizzo. Finally, John had enough. John's from New Jersey. He's not going to put up with this crap. So he stepped outside and called the party and got to talk them down to allow John to, and Gary said, you have to stand with your back against that wall over there. So it's like Abu Ghraib torture that Gary did to the 65-year-old John Pizzo, who's now a little older. But anyway, it was just, but really, this is the only limitation. There are 2 of them. Don't talk to people, don't impede them. Okay, that's 3. Well, these are things you cannot do. And yet your little Nazis in your counties are going to try and extend that all the way down to where they put a little square on the floor and say, stand in that square. And if you leave that square, I'm kicking you out of here as being disruptive. This is where you have to push back. You're an observer. You have rights. These are your elections too. These are not just their elections. The law says stay out of the way of the voter, don't impede the process, and don't look at confidential information, and you're good. And these little Nazis below that have made it tighter and tighter. You have to push back. This is where I disagree with the Republican Party. They're like, oh, no, play nice, stay in your little square. So this is your call. If you want to, if you want to push back, work it with your county leaders, don't just do it on your own, because this is my advice, and the party is not responsible for what I say, and I'm not responsible for what the party says. This is my take on it. You need to push back, because these people, they want to restrict what you can see, and I believe they want to do it illegally, and well, it's immoral, but it's not illegal. So we're stuck with it unless we take them to court. So you choose your battles. That's all I'm saying. Okay, do not enter the voting booth area. He's going to read that to you. That means the area where they're actually filling out the ballots. Does that mean you can look? Can you look in there? The intent of that is to stop you from standing over a voter, and I agree. That's Jimmy Carter in his book talked about how that was a big deal in Plains, Georgia, when he was in his first election. Pretty good book, actually. But the way they've taken it is you can never step in there. And what we're seeing, we're getting a lot of reports of people leaving their electioneering material in there. They get handed a voter guide by let's just say, the Bladen Improvement Association, or the Wake Citizens, Southeast Wake Improvement Association, or whatever they're called, or the Durham Citizens Alliance, which is a Chinese communist organization as far as I'm concerned. They leave their voting material in the booth, and then you walk in and you see it, and you do what you're supposed to do, and to be a good little commie. Okay, all humor aside, or all satire, sarcasm. There's not supposed to be any electioneering material in the voting booth. If you see any, tell the chief judge. And okay, thank you, and they'll pull it out. Because people do it. People leave it in there, and the chief judge may or may not be on the ball, so let them know.
They do not enter the voting booth area. Do not interfere with the privacy of a curbside voter while the voter is voting. They do not board a bus or other vehicle containing curbside voters. They do not provide voter assistance. Do not photograph or video voters without consent of the voter and the chief judge. Do not photograph or video a candidate without the candidate's.
Okay, I've already been over that. I want to back up to this top point here, right there. Really the top one. Do not board a bus or other vehicle containing curbside voters. If you're watching, you should be close enough to be able to hear the name of the voter while observing social distancing rules. There is no 50-foot bubble for observers. It's a very subjective question about intimidation. You should be able to hear the voter's name when they check in, as you read earlier, but they're not at the check-in desk now. They're at curbside. This is something to discuss with the chief judge to make sure there won't be a problem with you hearing the name of the person at the curbside voting spot. Again, I'm way too emotional on this, and I'm way too amped up just talking about it, but you want to walk in there and just be nice to the chief judge. Just realize that some of them are bad, but hopefully you won't have one. Hopefully you'll have a good one. You do want to hear what's going on at those buses and stuff. Probably what they're going to do is bring the ballots on board. They should only do one at a time. We'll go into procedures later. What we don't want to see is somebody sitting in a car and the driver yapping while the voter is voting. If you see that, make a note of it. You can't film it. Maybe you can, but probably not. Because they say you can't photograph a voter.
Do not photograph or.
Yeah, so, those are voters out there, so you can't really photograph them. And so it's, but if you see the driver yakking, if they're really coaching the person in the car or taking the ballot from the person in the car, you just pay attention. Just pay attention. You should be allowed to see that. Get where you can. And if the chief judge won't let you, take it up with your attorneys at the county party level, and they'll talk with our attorneys, and we'll decide if it's a hill worth dying on.
Do not photograph or video voters without consent of the voter and the chief judge. Do not photograph or video a candidate without the candidate's consent. In this instance, it is not necessary to obtain the consent of the chief judge. Runners. Runners are appointed in advance by a political party to collect lists of people who have voted. The county party chair may send a runner instead of having an observer receive the voting list. The schedule to obtain a list is 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. A party is only entitled to one list at each of the designated times. Any registered voter is entitled to assistance entering or exiting the voting booth and filling out a ballot.
Okay, this has been a very contentious issue in the past. Any registered voter is entitled to assistance in exiting. This is a gray area where you'll have party bosses coming in there and assisting a lot of people. I got bad news for you. There's no limit on how many times one guy can assist people. There are rules about how that voter has to request that assistance. And that's not gone over with. That's not mentioned here very well. But the voter does have to request the assistance. A guy can't just come in and, I'm assisting her. No, that's not the way it works. The chief official, the polling official should say, are you requesting this? And, decide a person's torture. It's, blinking. Blink twice if you're under duress. It's just, it's hard to say because that's a gray area. It says any voter may receive such assistance from certain relatives. Voters who are disabled, blind, or unable to speak, blah, 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 may receive assistance from a person of the voter's choice, provided the person is not an employer or agent of the unions, of the voters' union.
Any voter may receive such assistance from certain relatives. Voters who are disabled, blind, or unable to read, speak, or write English may receive assistance from a person of the voter's choice, provided that the person is not an employer or agent of the voters' union. There is no limitation on the number of voters a person can assist.
That's annoying, but you can't do anything about it. Same guys coming in over and over again. If the voters are asking for it, there's nothing wrong with it. We think there's illegality going when that happens. I'm just helping people who can't help themselves, right? Well, you sure do find a lot of people who can't help themselves. Okay, there's a message from Dave that you're now seeing. I think that's it.
For more information on elections in North Carolina, visit.
All right. This video ran long. Certain amount of apology for that. It ran long, and it is what it is. We're what I wanted to go over today was especially bones of contention for for every party, every county leader in every county of each party, and their friction points between observers and deployment of observers, and the whole issue of what observers can see and can't see. And we'll go more into detail there, and I hope it isn't too redundant, but some of this is, and it's very important. That the do's and don'ts are very important because you don't want to get kicked out. But part of my goal is to prevent you to be unjustly kicked out, and we've seen a lot of that, and that's why I'm such a hard guy about that. Okay, that's it. Thank you for this module, and as always, if you want to help us out, you look at the video and you go, yeah, people don't suck that bad. Kick in a donation to us. You got a contribution page out there. We could use your help, and I promise you we won't waste it. That's all I can say. What we do with it, what I'd like to do is pay attorneys to wage lawfare, but that's a whole other story. Call me on the side if you want to do that, if you want to make that kind of donation, and we'll talk. Okay. Thank you.